Morning, everybody, and welcome to CEO Chat, where on this program, my name is Cini.
I'm Joe Asumendi.
And it's always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Al.
You know what? People who do other programs on RVN call me all the time and they say, we had Laura Sicola on our program. How come you haven't had her on your program yet?
Save the best for last.
Well, that's one way to put it.
Wait,
but I'm just glad we finally got around to it because
good.
she's a great guest and she's got a lot to offer. And
welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
It's just a pleasure to have you on the program.
I'm so excited to be here.
And it's really about coaching people so that their point is made in a way that is memorable.
Yes.
And you mentioned your approach involves 3 C's, so maybe we can talk about how you do things differently, and then we'll talk about some of the stuff you know.
Sure.
Great.
There you go.
Good.
Sure. The general focus is it's one thing as a leader to be the brains behind the operation, to have all that knowledge and expertise, but you also have to be able to message your ideas, to get them across to others in a way that shows that you can be the face and the voice in front of the operations, in a way that'll get through to them so it makes sense and they get on board and get to yes. And that's what I call vocal executive presence, and that has the 3 C's, which are the ability to command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal. That's what it's all about.
Command, connect, and close.
Yep.
And you know, it's interesting as you're describing that, because an awful lot of people who never make it to CEO will be frustrated that they feel as though they're equally competent, maybe even better, but and they were passed over for this position. But a lot of times the CEO is not necessarily the smartest person in the room. It's the person who communicates the goals of the organization most effectively.
And the idea of what does it mean to be the smartest person, right? Intelligence is not a single number, despite the fact what IQ tests would like you to believe. There's all kinds of intelligence, and a big one is, can you make other people understand what you know?
Yeah.
And it's not just about are your number crunching skills better than anybody else? And if you can't get people to see your vision, then you're not leading. You're just the boss.
Yeah, you're just the boss.
And that changes everything.
That's okay. And you've written a book.
Yes.
Looking at the title, it's called "Speaking to Influence." I want to make sure I have this turned around right. And it's on Amazon,
Yes.
I'm assuming.
Yep.
So the 3 C's, I guess, are covered in this book?
They absolutely are, yes.
All right,
and it's
great.
available, of course, in paperback, but also in ebook and Audible. So if you can stand listening to me for 25 minutes or so here, then
I think we can.
get a
I'm
few
pretty
more
sure.
hours worth on the Audible, because I do my own narration.
Oh, you do?
Well,
Good.
I can tell you, we couldn't wait to listen to you for 25 minutes. So we're just glad you're here. Now, I know you've also been posting on LinkedIn about the Democratic nominees and the debates. And you're watching them,
Yes.
but not from the point of view of rah-rah Democrat or
No, not at
rah-rah
all.
Republican. It's not partisan at all. You're just looking at the messaging
Yep.
and the way they're expressing their points. What are your takeaways from that?
The primary takeaway is that the Democrats have not learned their lesson from 2016.
Really?
Yes, if you want to go back to my earlier post, I had done an analysis in 2016 of the Trump and Clinton messaging strategies and their campaigns, again, nonpartisan discussion, but just
Right.
looking at what were they doing, what was working for them, why, and then what could we as leaders learn from them in being more effective messengers of our own.
Right.
And some of the things that he did incredibly effectively that she did not at that time was just things like, can you get your core principles into sound bites?
Into a 10-second thing.
Yes, I mean, literally like 2 to 5 word simple messages. And things like, I mean, let me ask you, what do you remember from his campaign in 2016?
Build a wall, Mexico's going to pay for it. I mean, there were things that he would say over and over again.
Great again. You know, all these
Great slogan, by the way.
Repeal Obamacare.
Yeah,
2, 3, 4 words, action verbs, concrete, visible outcomes that you could imagine the difference between now and then. And she had none of that. I've done trainings for people, for Democratic candidate groups as well as Republican, and even with the Democrats, when I say now, tell me from 2016, what were his big messages? They'd rattle those off.
Right.
And what were hers? Silence.
Dead
Wow.
silence.
Dead silence. At best, I'd get stronger together. Well, that's nice, but that's not a campaign
But yeah,
promise.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
That's a
based on that.
context of how we're going to achieve something,
No.
and a community of sorts that we would like to create. But to do what? What are you going to do with that nice environment? That's why nobody bought into her, because nobody could say what she stood for. Good messaging in the campaigns needs to be able to get it into sound bites where people can then repeat it, if only to tell you why they don't like it.
Right.
Talk over the water cooler at the coffee pot and say, I can't believe he's going to build a wall. Fine, but by talking about it more, they evangelize.
They're evangelizing
Yes, they
without
are.
meaning to. They're
Otherwise-
actually carrying his message.
Correct. Correct.
And which works for him.
And it will work for them, but they're not learning that. If you look at the all 4 days of the first 2 rounds of this year's Democratic primary debates, nobody has those sound bites. A few slipped in here and there, but they were in passing. They were not intentionally started, referenced in the middle, and bookended at the end with, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do.
How important is body language?
Huge, hugely important, because if you don't have the body language that is that reinforces how you feel about what you're saying, it undermines your credibility, and you want to feed people into it. If you look at, for example, the difference between the head motions of Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris.
Okay.
When Elizabeth Warren is talking in frustration about all the stuff that needs to stop, her head does this constantly. It's the frustration, but the messaging is no, not this, not this. But I don't know. Okay, I know what you want to stop. I don't know where we're going with it, and it's still a negative impression. Correct.
Right.
Kamala Harris, when she talks, she does hardcore, almost bobbing with her head, but she's going, don't you agree? Don't you agree? Okay. So it's subliminally implanting yes into the minds. Now, you don't want to be a bobblehead doll all over the place, but those are the little things that will associate meanings and responses in the people.
It's funny, as you were talking, I was thinking that a lot of people think selling is about beating the competition. And a lot of times we focus on that.
Sure.
But in the case of the political debates, and often in selling, it's about getting somebody to do something. Because the real competition is nothing.
Correct.
The real competition is people are just going to leave and not vote for anybody or not do anything.
Right.
Motivating people to take an action is really what you're trying to do. And I can see where that command the room, connect with your audience, close the deal. Make sure you close the deal. I can see where that's really critical. And on the second night of this round of debates, they did a better job of it, except for Tulsi, you were saying.
Yes, so a big difference between, if you look at round 2, there were the 2 nights, nobody in round 1. And then in round 2, on the first night, Bernie Sanders was the only one who closed his final talking points, his closing statements, with a call to action. A simple instruction of what to do. If you believe in this, go to berniesanders.com to be one of the millions to do this for this outcome and result.
Right.
And nobody else did it that night. And I think the second night, all the candidates had gone, oh my gosh, that was a great idea. We need to know where to tell people. He was the only one. So everybody, sadly, except Tulsi Gabbard, seemed to have gotten that memo. Because 9 out of 10 people the second night closed with go to this website. Now there were those who do this. There were some who did it much better than others, who explained why you'd go there. If you believe this, if you want this result, then go here and do this. Those were the stars. Some of them did it great. Some botched it completely. God help him, Joe Biden. He was trying to be different. It's not a website. It was a text. It was supposed to say text Joe to 30330 or something along those lines. Except he said go to Joe 30330. Sounds like a website. There is no website.
So you gave him wrong.
If you're going to have a call to action, you can't botch it up. I mean, I get there's pressure and stuff.
Now that speaks to preparation.
Yes.
Really, a lot of
handlers.
Are you prepared to deliver that last line?
Right.
And I think a lot of people in their heads think, well, that's not. It's so simple. I don't really need to practice that.
Yeah.
But you really do need to practice that close.
Yes.
You've got to know what words you're going to say. And
Correct.
Because if you start to stumble on that, then you're pretty much stepped all over it, which is a bad thing.
And it's sad because on the one hand, his was unique in that it wasn't a website, it was a text thing.
Right.
So it should have connected with a younger audience in many ways because it's more modern. But by botching up the delivery, it just sounded like Grandpa's trying to be cool.
Trying to,
and doesn't
make
know.
my Wi-Fi work.
Right. It's like, let's go onto the computer and do a Twitter thing. No, that's not no.
If you're trying to get younger.
Good try, old man.
And we live in a world where it's possible for older candidates to earn younger.
Look at Bernie.
Support.
I mean, my gosh, Sanders is a master at that.
So he just needs to. So that's getting us to what you do.
Yeah.
So in an engagement with Laura, if I resonate with the message and how you can make me a better version of me,
sure.
What would my engagement with you be like? Where do we start?
So assuming we're looking at, there's 2 options really. There's one is the one-on-one coaching engagement, and one would be a team training. Bring your C-suite team, bring your sales team, your whoever it happens to be, and we'd do a day training. But for the one-on-one coaching, what we're really looking at is where do you need to have greater influence with What audience? Do you feel like you don't have the relationship you need to have? Where don't you have the pull that you want or the reputation that you need to get the results you want? Okay. Then we sort of reverse engineer, well, what is it about the way you're messaging, either the content, the way you're framing your ideas, or the delivery? Mm-hmm. Could be anything from what your voice is doing to the way you dress for the occasion to the body language or whatever it is. Sure, any of those details, because it's a constellation that you're projecting to the audience that's either making them get it and get you or not. Right. So we look at figuring out how you can still be you, still be authentic, but be the best version of you that that audience needs to see and hear in order to be able to feel a connection, for you and your message to resonate with them so that it gets through to their ears, their minds, their hearts, possibly their wallets, depending on what you're looking for.
Can anybody be taught that?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's, what's so valuable about this is that you're working with people based on, not everybody can do things perfectly.
Correct.
In any particular context. And you can tell by listening to somebody what some of their basic tendencies are and what they probably won't be able to change.
Oh yeah.
But there's always one or two things that anybody can change to improve the pace of the way they express themselves or make the points that they need to make.
Sure.
And your job in that engagement is to try to find that for people.
Yes. Yes. So, for example, I've been working with some senior executives at a financial asset management group where they're looking to do some more public-facing either videos or other educational programming to inform more people, to be more relatable to their clients, to their advisors, to whoever else. And these are some of the most brilliant financial minds in the world.
Right.
But on a webinar screen, it can't just be numbers, because nobody has to tune in.
Right.
You have to have a little bit of charisma in there somehow. You have to be able to take that expertise and make it relevant and comprehensible and interesting for people who are both very market savvy and want to know more, and those who maybe are new clients and new investors and don't know much of anything about the markets but are tuning in because they're trying to start the process of learning. Right. How do you not, quote unquote, dumb it down or water it down for the lesser knowledgeable, but in a way that still makes it valuable for those who have more knowledge.
How do you improve your storytelling skills?
Correct.
How do you make a relatable story out this day? Anybody out there who's watching and thinks that they can put a fine point on the points they made, Laura Sicola is a person to call. We're going to take a break, Laura, then we're going to come back maybe and talk about your work with teams.
Sure.
That sounds very interesting.
Terrific.
We'll be back with more CEO Chat and Laura Sicola after these messages.
Stick around.
There we go. Welcome back to CEO Chat. My name is Cini.
I'm Joe Asumendi.
And this is Laura Sicola.
Dr. Laura Sicola.
Dr. Laura Sicola, who is a best-selling author, New York Times bestseller list for 3,255 weeks in a row.
Really?
And a terrific book, really a great book that explains everything that Laura does, and it's about learning to make your point more effectively. During the break, we were talking about how a lot of people think it's about sales training, but communications training is really a superset of sales training. It's bigger than that.
Correct.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, happy to. The sales training, of course, is important, and being a good communicator in sales, in fundraising. I do a lot of work in those nonprofit areas as well as, sure, that's important, but ultimately for anybody, whether you come up through tech, you come up through finance, you come up through legal, through whatever that area is, your technical skills are going to get you to a certain height in that career. But then there's a glass ceiling that you're going to hit unless you can manage to transition over and be not just effective communicating that expertise to people with a similar expertise.
Right.
But more universally. If you come up through finance and you can talk to IT, and you can talk to sales, and you can talk to HR, and you can talk to all these other groups in a way that makes them all say, I see your vision, I get it, and I want to work with you, that's the difference between someone who moves all the way up and someone who doesn't. So actually comparatively minimum of my work is specifically with sales teams directly. It's more with the IT, the finance, the HR leaders who are at that point and want to get to the top. Right. And they know that ability to communicate with a wider audience internally and externally is going to be the make or break difference.
So
it's the missing link.
The power of the question, what is it you do for a living, or what is it your company does?
Sure.
Your opportunity to answer that question affords you a window of time not forever.
Sure.
If you dive into the technical details of what you actually do in your job, you'll lose the audience you're trying to win.
Sure.
And what you want to do is what Laura would teach you to do and work on you to do, which is to communicate with a passion and with a close,
Sure.
meaning at the end of it, there's something you should do to learn more about what it is I've just told you about.
Well, those are certainly factors, absolutely.
Yeah,
And sometimes
that's-
it's about how you open.
Right.
Do you have an easy entry that makes people want to learn more? Do you, and in the middle of it, when you're explaining something, do you break it down in a way that they can get it? You know, do you get stuck with the expert's curse, which is where you know so much about something that you sort of don't remember or otherwise get why it's not obvious to everybody else, and or how much detail they should already know, would need to know, would want to know. If you can't read your audience that way, you're going to lose them before you even start. So the ability to identify what they need to know and how you need to get it to them is an incredibly important factor that's going to make that connection.
There's nothing worse when I listen to somebody so technical that I get lost. And I think that's what you do. You really get that.
Or the person you're trying to explain it
Right,
to.
exactly.
You could really, that would be, okay, now I was reading Speaking to Influence while
Okay.
you were talking, I must say. It's a great book, by the way, on Amazon. Mastering Your Leadership Voice, which is something I really need to work on.
Okay.
And I'll get started right after this, now that I've got access to the book. When you're, it's not though just about the way you project and what you say. A lot of the advice you're giving here is mechanical advice, like how do you use a microphone?
Sure.
I mean, that's, a lot of people really don't know how to, they don't know the mechanics of how do you get up in front of a group of people and use all the resources that are in front of you. So you
Correct.
help with that too.
Yeah, there's all the little details. You can have the perfect speech presentation outline of whatever you want to
Right.
convey, but you do have to think about the actual mechanics involved. You do have to think about things like, if it's a handheld mic, where do you hold it? Do you know that most microphones are what's called unidirectional? So if you hold it here, like you're going to blow across it like an old jug or something, that's not going to pick you up. You're going to end up sounding like this, as opposed to holding it outright. Watch any of the American Idol or,
Sure,
or
the
those
way
kind of
they
singing
sing into
commercials.
the way
all
they sing
hold
into
it
the
like
song.
that, right? Because
Right.
the microphone picks up the sound better. You get a clearer, fuller sound through the room. If you have to listen to somebody talk like
That's
this,
going to be, they could be,
For an
it doesn't
hour.
matter how wonderful what it is they're saying,
it
that
just
you're losing the
undermines your
effect of it.
effectiveness. Exactly.
That's important. Now, a friend of mine used to talk about this thing called the Franken deck, which is the Frankenstein PowerPoint deck.
Nice.
That includes everything you ever thought you'd ever want to say to anybody.
Yep.
That you feel you always have to walk dutifully through and you can't skip anything. What do you say to somebody that's fixated on that?
Death by PowerPoint.
Seriously,
so if
that's
you
what
want
it
to
is.
kill people with your presentation, fine. So think of it this way. There's a relationship between the presenter and their slides. And that relationship, we're going to go into a little music history here, is not a Sonny and Cher relationship. There is no 50-50 equal partnership about who leads and who harmonizes, et cetera, where you just trade off from time to time. There's only a Gladys Knight and the Pips relationship.
Okay.
Either you're Gladys Knight and you command the audience's attention, you carry the melody, you carry the lead vocals, you carry the lyrics, all that kind of stuff,
Right.
or you're a Pip and you're in the background for a little visual interest, little harmony, but you will never take the stage. Nobody knows the names of any of the Pips
Right.
who are back there.
Right, right.
Most people, when you do what you have suggested with regard to those horrific Frankenstein kind of PowerPoint slides where there's so much information there that the audience probably doesn't need you to be there because everything's
After all, you
already
can send me
there.
the deck and shut up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or it's just, it's so hard for them to process everything that's on there that they couldn't pay attention to you if they wanted to.
Right, right.
Either way, all the audience's attention goes to the slides. That becomes Gladys Knight. You have relegated yourself to Pip status. Who wants to be a Pip? Nobody wants to be a Pip.
Nobody does.
Not in that role.
What
at
you've
least.
done is turn the whole presentation over to the PowerPoint deck.
Correct.
And all you're doing is jockeying slide after slide. You have no role really
Correct.
in this.
You have relegated, you've basically made yourself obsolete.
That's a mistake.
In the process. Huge mistake.
Huge
If you're
mistake.
trying to say, I'm the leader, pay attention to me, here's supplemental information, but I want a connection with you. I don't want you to have a better relationship with my slides
Yeah.
than with me. Just like I don't want you to have a better relationship with my voicemail than with me personally.
That in itself is hugely important.
Correct.
And the length of the presentation. A lot of people feel like they need to have something that fills an hour, but sometimes a 5 or 10 minute thing has way more impact than an hour-long thing.
Yeah.
Getting it. In fact, the Democrat debates, the candidates don't really get very much time.
Correct.
You've got to make that time work for you.
Yes.
So you really can't get into a lot of the details. If you do that, you're just going to waste waste your time.
Correct. And you do have to have substance behind your statements. It's not that you're just trying to be super
Sure.
reductivist and only have quick little tweetable sound bites and nothing behind them. It's not just about sounding
There has
good.
to be substance to it.
Sure, but
Right.
can you get it down to a very easy to understand, remember, and repeat soundbite? Einstein had a great quote, which is that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it
Then you
well
don't
enough.
understand
Right.
it yourself. So, wow.
And your audience, look, they can tell if it's just fluff too. They can see that real easily.
Oh,
Yes, and a big part of the challenge, and every time I do this in larger group trainings, the most senior person in the room comes up to me afterwards and thanks me for referencing it, is that in managing up in particular, in presenting to somebody who outranks you or otherwise a very high-level stakeholder, is the ability to just get to the point.
Right.
I gave you the job of analysis and whatever so that you could do all the distillation
Boil this
and then
down.
just give me the so what.
Get me to the so what.
And a lot of people get nervous when they're trying to present to somebody higher, so they try to explain all the details
Right.
around
Sure.
how they got to the result
Right.
and to prove themselves
Right.
effectively and justify their ideas. And the leader's going, come on,
Yeah, come on,
Where
wrap
are
it
we
up,
going
wrap
with this?
it
And
up,
often
where
they'll
are we
cut
going
you
with
off and
this?
say,
Right.
okay, so what's your point?
Yeah.
Which flusters people. Flip it around. Don't give me the background first. Get to the point first. That's bait.
Yeah.
If I like your point, then I'll ask you for the kind of detail that I want to help me understand it.
There you
And
go.
then we'll make it a dialogue.
Good.
That's what you want. You want people to say, tell me more. You want
Exactly.
to know exactly what details people do and don't want, so you give them only what they need and want, and that makes you a more valuable resource and more visionary leader, not just a tactician who you want on the team, but not in front of it.
And that's what makes you so much more than a communications coach.
Correct.
I mean, it's that total presence that you're really aiming for.
It's about strategy.
Real quick, what kinds of companies ought to be calling you? What size companies, what kind of companies? Who do you work with?
I work with Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, Fortune 50, so as well as smaller organizations where maybe it's a family-run business and they're looking to sell. They're looking for succession planning. They're looking for so succession planning is actually a big one. So whether you're in a small family-owned business or a larger corporation, if you know that you want to groom someone for that next opportunity to take over something
Right.
important, they need not just the tech skills,
of that
that
is-
leadership image, that communication skill.
Wow.
So really, I do tons of work with pharma, with IT and tech, with communications, with banks and financial organizations. Really, it's very industry agnostic.
And your teams. You also work with teams. So maybe
Yes.
you talk a little bit about the team coaching you do.
Sure. So the team, it's more team training. So at that point, if it's your, whether it's your senior executive team, I just came back from doing a strategy retreat day for a leadership group. Whether it is I've done in-house counsel day-long trainings for legal departments. I've done work for IT groups where they're trying to learn to be more able to explain IT to everybody
Sure.
else they have to provide IT for. So it really is just a matter of where do you realize your team needs to have a more unified message and or be able to explain what they do to whoever your internal or external clients are. I've done work with the Department of Commerce and some of the
Great.
groups there because they're lobbyists
Right.
trying to figure out how to explain what it is that you're pushing for to the senators that you need the buy-in from.
Great.
So it's really about messaging.
So these are meetings and workshops that you
Yes.
offer, that you have a structure.
Correct.
So there's a plan that you kind of follow.
Yep.
How long is a typical workshop? How long does it run?
Workshops are typically either half day, full day, or sometimes 2 day, depending on what they're looking for. And ideally, they would start with that intensive deep dive and then go into 6 to 12 months worth of coaching after that with some of the key players.
You come back afterwards then?
Gladly.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good. And you're also a speaker.
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Yep.
You
Yep.
probably. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the speaking engagements. Who typically retains you for that?
I just had a great time in California a couple of weeks ago at the Professional Businesswomen of California conference. It was kind of like the Pennsylvania conference for women, about 7,000 people total. I had a breakout session, but my breakout was 1,400. And it was all these women who realized that they know that they're smart, they're professionally successful, good at their jobs, but they know that being a more effective communicator is going to be the difference between being good and at where they are and getting to the next level and having equal or greater success.
That's important.
That was a lot of fun.
So there's a difference then in coaching men versus coaching women with respect to how you get a win.
Well, I mean, there's differences in everybody. So whether it's, I just did a talk a little while ago also for the planned giving, the Eastern Regional Conference on Philanthropy. So looking at fundraising. That was men and women alike.
Right.
Just trying to figure out for your nonprofit organization, how do you engage more donors? How do you get to people's hearts, which is critical in that environment in order to get through to the wallets, of course.
Sure.
But that's not about men or women. The women's group happened to be the larger conference that I was at recently. Planned Giving was a smaller one. But any organization that's looking for a keynote, a workshop, or a breakout or of some sort, just to do a deep dive fast and get people to have an aha moment that they're going to take with them moving forward.
That's great. How much do you have to know about what the company does for a living to be able to work with them?
Not much. I mean, you do enough work after a while, you get a good sense of what's going on. But what's interesting is that it's often similar types of challenges that everybody is experiencing. It's the ability to either something like, now suddenly you're at the top level and there's a little bit of imposter syndrome that's coming through. And so how do you speak with the confidence that you need to portray for everybody else to see you and to buy into you as the new leader? Or it could be a matter of you're going to do more media appearances like this, or podcasts, or on NBC, on the morning talk show, wherever it is. How do you have the presence to do those details? I'll help you take your message and message it, but a big difference between what I do as an executive communications coach and what a more traditional executive coach would do is that I'm not going to help you make any business decisions. But when you've made those decisions, I'm going to help you message them in a way that'll get the buy-in you need to get the results you want.
That's critical. You mentioned imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Real quick, let's talk about that.
Sure, that people are often very confident in their technical skills and they are vying for that top level job, and they get there and suddenly there's a panic that says, well, what if someone questions whether or not I actually belong here? Do I really have the chops? Do I really have what it takes? Can I really make these hard decisions? And what if? And we go into that panic of being exposed as an imposter.
Feeling like that insecurity,
could happen.
If that starts to surface, then that's going to undermine your credibility in everything.
Correct.
So people will pick that up.
Oh yes, absolutely, because it comes through. Your voice flags it, your stories flag it. Too many signs will let you know, will let others know that you don't feel confident, and if you're not confident in yourself, they won't feel confident in you. So we have to fix that in your messaging.
And that part of the coaching that you do obviously includes managing things like that.
Correct.
So you look at things like posture, you listen to the pitch of the voice.
Yep.
Some things you can fix and some things you can't.
Sure, I mean, I'll never sound like James Earl Jones.
Right.
But I can do many things with how I use my voice that'll make it sound fuller, make it sound more authoritative. But even things like just making sure that I don't sound like I'm asking questions all the time, which makes people nervous. Like I'm not totally sure, you know,
like that
right?
Totally, the
like I'm doing right
thing.
now. Right, exactly.
Right.
And men and women do that. And it's a subconscious signal of insecurity. Just men don't tend to recognize it in each other as that. But when they do hear each other do it, underneath, it just makes people have subconscious doubt. So we want to make sure that comes out.
Imagine how much better we'd be at this if Laura were our first guest instead of the guest tonight. We're only sorry that we didn't meet you first.
Well, I would gladly come back.
Terrific. We're going to have you back. Speaking Influence, Dr. Laura Sicola, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. Terrific book.
Thank you so
much. You've been a great guest. Here's your chance to tell everybody how to reach you if they want to engage you.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you so much. My website, www.vocalimpactproductions.com. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn as well as on Twitter with Laura Sicola. But it's been a great pleasure, and I look forward to hearing from all of you.
Total pleasure for us.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you. And thanks all of you for joining us today on CEO Chat. Until next Friday, this is Joe Asumendi.
And that's Al Cini.
Thank you for not forgetting.
Oh, I'm wondering.
Appreciate that. You guys all have a great week.
Yeah, be safe, sound, and join us next Friday. Thank you, Dr. Laura.
Thank you.
Nice.
Appreciate it.
Nice work. Just terrific.
Thank you.
Really